Hello and welcome to the Women of Ambition podcast. I am your host, Alyssa Calder Hulme. Today we are doing a bit of a different type of podcast. I will be interviewing myself, so to speak. I'm just going to be answering the questions that I normally ask my guests. So, I do consider myself to be an ambitious woman. Host of this podcast, not too surprising. So my short answer is yes. The longer answer is that I recently came to the realization that I was ambitious and that I felt this little tiny seed of shame when it came to recognizing that in myself. And when I have a hard thing in my life, I choose to dive deep into it. And so I go and I sit in the really uncomfortable space until it becomes normal for me. Just like if you had a tight knot muscle in your back and you push on it hard until it releases. That's kind of my visualization. So it's super fun to be in a relationship with me because if something happens that's uncomfortable, I want to go and talk about it. And I don't sweep it under the rug. I do the opposite of it. I bring it out, I show it around, we talk about it, we recognize the elephant in the room. And so for this piece of shame, I wanted to dig into it a little bit. And so I did a little bit of research. There is so much research out there for women and ambition. I'm just going to bring up a couple that are at the top of my mind. There was a study done with an MBA school at a top university, and they found that unmarried women reported being less driven when they were told that their dreams and goals for their career would be shared with classmates versus a school counselor. There's something about being public with ambition as a single woman that they were able to show was problematic with a gender imbalance. Men just aren't facing the same penalties that women do. And I think that is so interesting, and I am so interested in that, so I want to dig into that more. The study found that boys have more advanced plans for higher education than girls by the age of 15. And they found that having concrete plans for the future increased those children's ability to perform better, regardless of family income or current grades. And so there's a correlation between having specific plans and actually achieving end goals, duh. But what's important, the takeaway is that concrete plans matter to academic success, and girls are less likely to have concrete academic plans and shoot for the stars than boys are, and that carries them throughout their entire career. The last thing I want to talk about is a study done by the Boston Consulting Group. And they looked at company culture and feelings of the companies improving in gender diversity or being stagnant. And the feeling of growth or stagnation was the determining factor in supporting or killing women's ambitions in these companies. It did not have anything to do with family status or motherhood. Matt Krentz, who was the senior partner and co-author of the report from BCG, said that ambition is not a fixed trait. It's an attribute that can be nurtured or damaged over time through daily interactions and opportunities employees experience at work. So when I read that, and I'm exploring this ambition within myself, I say, okay, so ambition is not fixed. What am I doing to nurture or to damage it? And what I found is that I can do some specific things to help myself. And so I created this podcast to explore how other women feed their ambition and what that looks like and study it. And I wanted it to be in a format where other people could learn. My main goal is for me to learn because I'm exploring this for myself, but I want this conversation to be available for other women who are exploring this as well. About 6 months ago, when I started really thinking about this in a concrete way, I would say, well, I'm not super ambitious because I don't have a lot to show for it. And really, that's just BS. I've done a lot of very ambitious things in my life, and I stretch myself continually, but because it doesn't equate to a very well-respected career title or a certain level of paycheck or public recognition, I felt like calling myself ambitious was a bit of a stretch. But when I actually look back at my life, it's really not. So we're going to talk about some of those things. part of the introduction to me is I grew up in Southern California. I attended a private university, Brigham Young University. I worked through college the whole time to help support myself. I was married young and not without a lot of thought and work with that relationship. I think marriage is definitely ambitious, and marriage with the intention of thriving is very ambitious. I am the mother of 4 children. Having children is ambitious. We've talked about this on the podcast. I have homeschooled some of my children for some of those years. As a young mother, I did freelance writing. I also taught voice lessons out of my home. A few years ago, I decided to start homeschooling and homeschooled my neurodiverse children, which is absolutely ambitious. My kids are gifted and also have learning disabilities and lots of other things in the mix. I also started a business to be a homeschool consultant where I help other parents make plans and figure out materials for teaching their children. And I set up that business. Also, at the start of the pandemic a year ago, my husband and I decided to buy an RV and head out for 6 months and visit as many national parks as we could, while also social distancing and following state guidelines and safety procedures. And we did it. We took our family of 4. We had 1 dog at the time. My baby was a year old when we left. And we went for 6 months all over the United States, up through Oregon, all the way across to Maine, down the East Coast, all the way to the tip of Florida. We got chased out of Florida by Hurricane Eta, which was quite the adventure. Went all the way through to Texas, up through New Mexico, and back to Utah. We visited 38 national parks in 6 months. So living out of an RV with a family of 6 is ambitious. Traveling all over the United States in the middle of a pandemic, I think, is kind of next level ambitious. And the fact that we were able to visit so many national parks, it was a stretch, but it was amazing. And it was a goal we set. And it gave our family the ability to be social distanced and be out in nature all over the world. And it was really incredible. If you're interested in learning more about that, I have a whole separate Instagram account about that called Big Round Schoolhouse. So I have all kinds of things there if you want to go and see more about that trip, because it was truly incredible, and I am not done sharing all the places we visited. And actually in June, we're going to go out and finish all the rest of the parks. So we will have been to all the national parks in the contiguous U.S. In addition to all that, I am just really driven for personal healing and health. I have 2 different autoimmune diseases, and I've had mental health stuff that's come up in conjunction with that. And my goal is to invest in myself so that I can be the best version of myself. And that striving for that level of health and wellness, despite maybe some diagnoses that I have and some limitations that I supposedly have, qualifies as ambitious. Thriving in my relationships with my children and my spouse, I consider to be ambitious. My current most ambitious project is this podcast, and this episode is the last episode in season 1, and I'm going to be reassessing and coming back out in the fall with more, and hopefully over the summer having some little bonus content come out. I will definitely be sharing more on the Instagram page for this podcast, but for actual publishing podcast clips, I hope to have a couple little bonus content things come out over the summer. As I've been analyzing myself and the ambition that I have, what I've discovered is that I am able to feed this ambition by networking with other ambitious people, specifically women. And so starting this podcast was a way for me to do that. Each of the women I interviewed are people I admire and I look up to. And I can learn more about myself as I interview them, as I talk to my friends, as I read blog posts and books and Instagram accounts from other people doing amazing things, even if it's not something that I am specifically interested in. That feeds me to stretch myself and discover my current purpose or calling right now. And it's just inspiring to see other people doing what they really believe about. Things that kill that for me are fear. internalized patriarchy where I tell myself that because I'm a mother, because I'm a woman, my goals need to be smaller or they need to put other people above myself. Along with that, the opinions of others really squelch me, and I'm working really hard to create better boundaries, both verbally and physically and also energetically, to not allow those negative pieces to get in the way of my dreams. One thing that's really helped me with all this is going to therapy and realizing the deeper beliefs that I carry that don't actually align with my values and what I want to believe. And so one example of that would be to feel like because I'm a mother, I'm not allowed to work full time. I'm not allowed to hire out anything. I'm not allowed to put my kids in daycare. And that belief isn't really true. I know lots of women who work full time, who choose to have a nanny, who are doing all kinds of things with their lives and creating big goals for themselves and work at big corporations or entrepreneurs or choose to just invest in their art or their community. And they are fantastic mothers and fantastic people and living in alignment. But because I have that deeper belief that that's not possible for me, there's conflict. And so therapy helps me to really nail down what those beliefs are that are not really true and that I don't want to live my life on, and allows me to rewrite those deep beliefs to serve me. And so one of those changes might be I can be a mother and have goals and be ambitious and work. I can be the best version of myself and put myself first. It's okay for other people, even my children, to make sacrifices for my happiness. It doesn't all have to go one direction. So we'll talk about that a little more later. In terms of my childhood, these pieces of ambition came out in really funny ways. Another thing that I'm coming to identify in myself is that I have an entrepreneurial spirit, even though I might not feel like whatever I'm currently doing can be considered an entrepreneurial exercise, even though it is. I don't know. I still need to examine applying that trait of entrepreneur to myself because I still struggle with it. But I remember the earliest way that I attempted to make money as a kid was, I know kids sold lemonade, but I didn't have any lemons. And so I got out my hose and some cups of water and I sold tap water from my front yard to all of my neighborhood friends who had their own tap and their own water. And these are the days of, being free to drink out of the hose. And I sold water from my front yard. My next endeavor, I upped my game a little bit and I went to my neighbors' houses and I would pick the flowers out of their front yard, bring it to their porch and try and sell them their own flowers. And that worked sometimes, and other times it didn't turn out so well. Eventually I moved to pet sitting and babysitting, and then got my first real job when I was 15 and worked all the way through college into my first pregnancy when I got really sick and got wiped out. And that is the last time I've had a full-time consistent income. And that has been a really challenging thing for me. I feel a lot of shame that I don't contribute financially consistently to my family right now. And I'm working through that because my contributions come in many, many other ways. But I do have a goal of creating income for myself based on whatever I do next with my life. And I'm still in the process of figuring out exactly what that looks like for me. Because I do have methods of making money. I have a college degree. I could go get a job. But it's not quite the right thing. And I'm trying to figure out what that next thing is. And that is a piece of my ambition. But I want to be very clear. I do not think that in order to consider yourself ambitious, you have to have any kind of a financial, monetary income associated with it. Times when I lost that innate passion came with the fog of depression, came in the fog of taking on too much without enough support, periods of time where I did not require others to support me in the way that I needed just as a human being, and not standing up for my needs. And so that can look like setting boundaries with my husband, asking for help when I needed it, or just being willing to speak up for what my needs are when other people are also speaking up for their own needs. And when I gave myself away and let myself down over and over again, I slowly forgot and lost those pieces of me that are important and feed my passion and my ambition. And I know that as women, we do that a lot. And especially women in a marriage or with children, we can lose ourselves. And there is this belief that if we lose ourselves in the service of our children, then we'll find ultimate fulfillment. And I think there might be a kernel of truth somewhere in there, especially if you follow Christianity. But I really do not think the way that we talk about it now is the truth. I do not believe that by losing myself to my family, I will find ultimate fulfillment. Because you know what? I tried it. I tried it for 10 years. And I am a bigger person than just the label of motherhood can contain. I am a bigger person than what the label of stay-at-home mother can give me. And I feel dissonance because I am not living into my full self. There are other pieces of me that aren't being stretched or tried. And instead of making myself feel bad for that or shaming that, I'm choosing to explore that space and figure out what that means for me. And in rediscovering that, the best piece of advice I can give to others and to myself is just to go through the motions. I shared recently about my journey with postpartum depression and moving my body, and how choosing to move my body even in that space of a really hard time kind of helped me come back to myself. And that rings true here. I wanted to start this podcast, and instead of getting hung up in the details and buying all the expensive equipment and hiring out an editor and all the things that I could do to make this the most polished, perfected platform possible, that's a lot of P's, I decided to just start. And I asked a friend, and I set up the feed, and I linked things up, and I went for it. And I don't have the most fancy microphones. I'm using Apple hardwired headphones right now. But it works, and I'm in the middle of it, and I'm learning as we go. I'm reminded of my interview with Paige Smathers, and that was her exact advice, and it really rings true for me, because I can get hung up in the perfection side of things, and then I don't actually move into the place of action. And I need to be in the place of action, even if it doesn't turn out perfectly. Things that get in the way of my ambition currently are just my own energy level. I have autoimmune stuff that happens that makes me really tired, and it comes in waves, and it's not always clear what's going on or why. They're just general trends. And it's, I judge myself for them, and I think, what the heck? Why am I so lazy all of a sudden? Why am I not excited about this? Why do I need to lay down and rest so much? And I'm coming to realize that judgment isn't true, and that it is important for me to honor my energy and my passions. And then when I do get really excited about something, sometimes I judge that. And I think, what the heck? You're just getting all excited about this, and in a month from now or a couple of weeks, you're not going to be as passionate about it, and that's bad. And I'm learning to just be like, you know what? I'm going to be whatever I am right now. And if right now I need to rest, and if I need to rest for a while, that's okay. And if I'm really excited about my podcast and I want to record 5 interviews in 3 weeks like I did, that is what I'm going to do, and it's going to be awesome. And then when my energy picks back up, my interest picks back up, and I can get back into this. Another obstacle is my failure to set boundaries, to stick up for my time and my space. This can happen so easily being a mother, where I have Tuesday nights. It's a Tuesday night right now. This is why I'm recording it. Tuesday nights are my time to be alone, to go out with friends, to go out to dinner, to go to the gym, to do whatever I want to do, free time for me. And there are many times when my kids will want me to stay home, or my husband forgets and then is maybe irritated that he has to be on his own tonight. And it would be really easy for me. It would be really easy for me to rush in and want to rescue and say, oh, you're having a hard day, sweetheart. I'll just stay home and be with you. Or, to my husband, oh, you forgot. It's okay. I didn't really have plans tonight anyway. I'll just skip this week. And I've done that in the past, and it's really dishonoring to myself. I need this time. I've set it up this way, and it's okay for other people to be disappointed when I follow through on the things. It's okay to tell my child that their father is going to have to comfort them tonight because mom's going out. And it is okay to let my husband forget about his commitment and maybe be a little uncomfortable, or maybe he has to go and grab some pizza for dinner because he didn't plan for it. And like, that is okay to let people deal with the consequences of being human. I don't have to save everyone from their uncomfortable feelings. And yes, that is something I'm working on in therapy because it's absolutely a boundary thing. And it is absolutely learning how to treat myself as a human being instead of some superhero high on a pedestal mother that never has any cracks or needs, because that is not reality, and that is not the reality I want to portray to my children. The other obstacle would be my own self-confidence. I have imposter syndrome at times. I am a great singer. I taught lessons for many, many years, and the entire time of even enjoying my students and having them progress, I really struggled with imposter syndrome to the point where I don't teach lessons anymore because it was so uncomfortable for me. Even with the success I was having, even though I had way more students than I had time to teach and I was constantly getting asked, that imposter syndrome was so real to me that it paused my ability to even enjoy it. And so I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm in therapy working on all those pieces that contribute to that imposter syndrome. And I'm looking to discover my passions instead of, well, what can I do to make money? It's, well, what actually feeds me? And also, let's make money doing that. So I ask this question almost every interview, and I don't always include it because most people don't really have a great response. And it's curious to me. The question is, how do you handle those that judge or shame your big ideas? And I think we all have these people in our lives, but a lot of women don't want to talk about those people, or they don't recognize it. They don't see shame. Maybe they feel guilt, and they don't realize the external source of those feelings. And so sometimes I've included it in the podcast. Sometimes I edit it out, but it's been interesting to kind of watch how the women I interview process that question. For me, I've learned I do not talk with those people about my dreams. I do not cast my pearls before swine. They will probably figure out after it's done what I did, and great, whatever. But I don't pour my energy into someone who can't handle me and can't handle how big my energy is. And that means that I don't participate in some group chats. That means that when someone asks me about my life, I do what maybe previously felt disingenuous, but I don't talk about certain parts of my life. I talk about other things, or I talk about general ideas that I'm working through. But I might not go into specifics about, oh, I'm doing this podcast and it's so great and these are my goals and this is what I want to go with it. If I don't have a relationship with them that is reciprocal, I'm not going to go there. That has been a change for me in the last year and a half, probably. And it's uncomfortable at times. And people will find out about things after the fact. And, sometimes people think they have a right to know every aspect of your life, or I might feel obligated to share with them every aspect of my life if they ask. And I'm just learning that no, I don't have to do that. And I don't need to allow into my life any judgment or shame. It does not help me at all. I think it can happen sometimes surprising if we feel like someone is going to be supportive and then they aren't. And that is a different thing. If it is a safe person who you have a relationship with and they don't get it, that can be really hard. And I'm also learning that as much as someone might love me, they're never going to be as passionate about my passions as I am. And that's as it should be. It's kind of like when you have a baby and you're so excited about that baby and you want to go and share it with the rest of the world and no one else is as excited as you are. That might initially be really hard and frustrating, but you're the parent of this child. You should absolutely be the one who's the most excited and ready to go and ready to take on this challenge. And anyone else's perspective really doesn't matter. And my creations are my babies. I am the parent. I am the mother of this creation. And I should be the one that is the most excited about this. So if my husband hears an idea and doesn't really get it, or is like, yeah, okay, whatever, and I'm super jazzed about it, I just say, okay, you don't get it. That's fine. That's not actually a reflection on what I'm trying to do with my life or whether or not I should pursue something. And so I'm really careful about when I do share those dreams and goals with people, because those reactions can kind of take the wind out of my sails, and especially with people that I'm really close to. I know if I don't get a certain kind of reaction that maybe I'll be less inclined to take that risk. And so there are some times where I specifically won't tell those key people in my life what I'm doing until I'm in the process or until I've done it, because I understand the way my own brain works right now. And maybe it's a broken way to handle life, but I know that about myself. And so I'm going to guard against the wind being taken out of my sails. And I'm just going to allow myself to be the one that drives things. And a really tiny example of this is that as a freelance writer, I do a lot of one-off articles here and there for different people and different publications. I graduated with a degree in English, and you can ask anyone who knows me really well that I cannot spell. I think I have stealth dyslexia. This is what I've self-diagnosed myself as after working with my children and their own neuropsychologists. I'm very smart, I'm very gifted, but I can't spell. And so I'm a beautiful writer, but when it comes to small grammatical things and small spelling things, it's just awful. And so I have my husband proofread, or I used to have my husband proofread a lot of the things before I would publish. And it wasn't good for our relationship and our marriage, because he would edit a lot of things that I didn't agree with, or I'd be really excited about how I wrote something and he would want to change it. And I felt like relying on him I was kind of giving him more power. He wasn't asking for this, but in my mind, he was like kind of this gatekeeper. And so anytime I wanted to publish something, I needed his checkoff in a way, or I needed his help. And one thing I'm learning is I really value independence. And so it is so empowering for me to write something start to finish all by myself, do the added work, use the Grammarly or the programs needed to edit my work. And yeah, it's probably still going to include some errors, but it is more important for me to do it 99% of the way perfect by myself rather than do it 100% of the way involving someone else. And so I have been stepping into that more and taking more risks and allowing myself to make more mistakes in order to stay in my own power. And it's just been awesome. It's been so freeing for me. And as I've learned that I value independence and ways to practice it, this is a small way that costs me really nothing, where I can exercise my independence in publishing something without anybody's eyes looking at it. And as a freelance writer, I am not beholden to any agenda or any job or any editor that I don't choose into. And it's wonderful. And that is the reason why I did not go into journalism. Even though I love journalism, I had some really bad experiences with higher ups telling me what I could and could not publish, coming from a religious school. There are some uncomfortable truths that don't match cultural things that sometimes higher ups want you to edit out. And I just wasn't going to choose into that. And so this is the smaller version of that for myself. Doing something completely on my own, publishing, putting it out into the world without anyone's oversight. And this podcast has been another example of that. I don't get anyone's input before I publish. It's my own creation. It's my own thing. And I might ask for feedback after the fact, and then I can choose to integrate it or not. But it's after this thing has already been birthed out into the world and it's already done. And so choosing into that feedback is not a negative thing for me anymore. As women choose into more ambitious roles, And just as women in general, I think we need better support. And so for myself, that has looked like many things. It's looked like relying on my doctors and communicating with them and following through on labs and blood work and being mindful of what I eat and how I move my body. It has looked like reading lots of books, going to therapy, choosing my friends wisely, people who reciprocate. It's looked like meal prepping, hiring out meal prepping. It's looked like hiring house cleaners, and it's looked like being really honest with my husband in areas where we need to shift the load of our house and have some hard conversations. There was a shift where my husband needed to step up and take a more partnership role in our marriage, and I had to ask him for that, and I had to be really specific about what I needed and what I wanted, and it was a shift in the way that we organized our marriage, and so it was uncomfortable for both of us, and it took some time, and it was a distinct change in how we did it, but I had to stand up for my boundaries. No one else, even my husband, who loves me dearly and is my best friend, he does not know what my needs are and where my boundaries are. Only I can decide what is a need and what is a want and what's worth sacrificing for the greater good and what I need to guard and protect. And no one else is going to guard and protect that for me, at least not accurately. And so we've had to have some conversations so that he can know where and what he needs to do to be supportive and to create a more partnership marriage for both of us. That was always the goal when we got married. We talked about it in detail before we got married. And then we also chose to invest our time and finances and location of life to advance my husband's career. And it's worked wonderfully. But it's meant that as those crazy first couple of years died down, we were left with a really imbalanced home life. And so it took some reshuffling to make that work better. And it's kind of a constant thing that we talk about and have to juggle around, but we are in a much better place even in the last 2 years than we were before. And that has been wonderful. And it's allowed me to have more of the space just to be me and to be human. It allows me to say, hey, I'm having a crappy night. I'm going to go lay down and you'll be with the kids, instead of always the other way around. That support has been really important to accomplishing my goals. We started homeschooling when I had literally a newborn baby. She was 10 days old when I started homeschooling my children. And we, as a family, had to say, okay, our house is going to be messier. Okay, we're going to be eating out more. Okay, we're going to be hiring house cleaners. These are things that we are choosing into or choosing to pay for or asking for help with in order to meet our higher goals. And being on the same page as a family and then using my network was really important. Things that are key to my success are my mental and physical and spiritual and social wellness. I have to be really intentional with meeting each of those needs because I can get really driven and into a project like my podcast and completely neglect my social needs. Or I can get so into worrying about my relationships with my children or my husband that I neglect my own personal spiritual needs. And so I do a lot of meditation. I ask for help. I take nights, like Tuesday nights are my time for me. Starting at 6:00 on, it's all me. I can do whatever I want to do. I don't have to have it planned in advance. I can take care of myself in the moment, or I can plan it way out in advance and set up dinners with friends or whatever I want to do. I also take trips alone, and I take trips with my husband, and I take trips with friends. And that can be something really tiny, like going camping, or it can be a destination trip. They all feed me, and they all are essential to me being happy. And each and every one of those little things I just said is not something that anyone else can give me. It all takes me speaking up for my needs and saying, hey, this is actually worth spending our money on and our time on, and it might mean more work for someone else, and that's okay. things I'm choosing out of to make space in my life. I have a tendency to volunteer for lots of things because I have lots of interests, I have lots of passions, and I love to help people. And so I had to let go of being the president of our PTO at my kids' charter school when we decided to homeschool. And that was really hard because I was the vice president and I knew all the things and I knew all the connections and all the people, and I had invested a significant amount of time into the school and into relationships, and I had to shift that. And there were people who were disappointed, and taking myself out of that public role to really focus on my children was different. And it was something that it really was a binary choice. I couldn't do both. Another thing that I am currently choosing out of is setting up and coordinating a co-op. When you homeschool, one of the saving graces is setting up some kind of a co-op with other homeschooling parents. And we are creating one right now, and I had to really, really sit on my hands when it came to asking for what people could contribute, because I want to do it all, and I want to be in charge of it all, and I want to help, but I just cannot contribute that much time. And so I can do a class, I can help set up and clean up, but I can't be in charge of it all. Another thing I'm giving up right now is casual social time. I'm using my time really intentionally, and so I'm not spending time with casual acquaintances that don't really feed me. At the same time, it is important for me to keep building up my social sphere, and so I'm reaching out to new people and trying to create new relationships, but I'm being really mindful with where I'm using my time. I don't invest into a relationship or a project that I don't truly believe in. And what I believe in, that's a constantly evolving thing, but I'm really mindful with my time and my schedule. And if it's something I believe in, it's worth sacrificing personal time for, or sacrificing another part of my life, I'll totally do it. But if it's just because I feel social pressure to do something or familial pressure to do something, I'm learning how to say no and to step out of that. One of the things that really helps me nail down what is important to me is to understand my personal values. I did a values exercise where I just looked at a huge long list of values and marked off the things that were important to me, and then I ranked them. And I thought about them for months, and I immediately was able to identify that independence is something that I really value. And it took me a little bit longer, but I also identified growth and service. So independence for me is pretty much doing anything by myself. Like, I need to go to the gym so that I don't have my children hanging on me when I exercise. I cannot exercise with my children around me. Independence looks like self-publishing, freelance stuff, not asking for anyone else's input or ideas. It looks like this podcast. It looks like the trip I have planned in October. I'm going to fly a couple hours away for a weekend and go to a conference and stay in a hotel room all by myself. And that is going to be really empowering for me. And I'm willing to invest time and money into it because I know it's going to feed me. Growth for me looks like health and wellness, but it also is education. I read all the time. I love podcasts. I go to classes. I spend my time in the space of learning, and it serves me. And so I know a lot about neurodiversity. If that's something that's important to you, we can chat. I know a lot about homeschool and about different approaches. I know a lot about the different autoimmune diseases that I have. I know a lot about personal development because that is an area where I spend a lot of my time. My third value, service. This is where it gets really imbalanced. I think it really is my tertiary value, but this gets flipped all the time, where I will sacrifice my independence to go and help somebody else. Or I will sacrifice my time or whatever to go and save somebody from a hard situation. And it's not always an investment in a relationship where I'm getting something out of. And I don't think relationships always need to be a tit for tat, but there's definitely people who will just take and take and take and it doesn't actually feed me to just serve. I have to have balance. And so I I've been doing an exercise since the beginning of the year where I make my weekly agenda and I put in all the things that maybe aren't an appointment, like I'm going to meditate and I'm going to read with my children, and how am I actually using my time? And then I compare it to my values and I say, okay, so what am I doing this week to practice my value of independence? Where am I getting this need met? And frequently that's the one that is underrepresented. And so I'll say, oh, well, I need to go to the gym by myself, or I need to plan a trip just for me, or I need to remember not to ask for input about that project until I'm done. I look for growth. Where am I fitting in some growth? Service, that is a very easy one for me as a mother. I usually have to tone that one down. But it's important for me to compare how I'm using my time to what my values are. And that helps me to know what to drop that doesn't fit. Now, heading into the space of creation, I'm an ambitious woman. How do I know where to apply that or what to do with that? Right now, I'm learning to let myself play. As a child, we worked a lot and I had jobs, and I internalized the belief that my value was tied to production and that I wasn't worth just giving myself the time and space to play. I'm not articulating this super well, but what I'm taking my time doing now is, what is play for me now? And this podcast is play. It's what I'm coming to learn. It hits all of my values of independence, growth, and service. I'm letting go of self-judgment over, is it worth my husband taking over with my kids for these couple of hours so that I can do this? Is it worth my kids watching a TV show so that I can invest in my podcast? And yeah, it is. It's okay to let other people maybe not have the most perfect experience because I'm investing in myself. And I'm letting go of that place of frozen perfectionism where I'm valuing the output more than the creation. And I'm letting myself sit in that space of play with what passions do I have? What do I want to learn about? It doesn't have to yield something other than enjoyment for me. Letting that be enough is a really big thing that I'm working on right now. As I'm learning to apply my values, I've also done a thought exercise where I think about, okay, at my funeral, at the end of my life, what do I want my legacy to be? How do I want to be remembered? Whatever version of that question works for you. And I decided that I want to have left some kind of impact in the world for good. I don't want to just be remembered for anything. I want it to be for a good thing. And I want to have lived in a way where my kids, especially my daughters, feel free to pursue their own goals and purposes, even regardless of my parental approval. And what I realized is, if I am playing small because I'm uncomfortable with living into myself, I am setting an example for my children to play small. And I do not want that for them. And rather than try and build them up verbally and live a smaller life than I was intended to live, I'm going to lean into myself and be my big self. And they will learn from my example how to be themselves. And it will look different for me, and that's wonderful. But what I want them to know is that their mom was true to herself, and she did not sacrifice who she was for other people. That's the legacy I want to live. I still think it would be better if I could make choices just for myself because I want them. But knowing that my children, especially my daughters, are watching me gives me the extra push to really figure out what I want to do with my life. And I have not figured it out yet. I'm 32 right now. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I don't know if I want to go back to school. I don't know if I want to start a company. I think I will eventually because I have that entrepreneurial piece in me, and I want to do more and do something bigger and be working with a team, and I would love to be a public speaker, and I'd love to write a book someday, and I have all these things in me that I just need to explore. And as I allow myself to play and I give myself room to just be a human person rather than just a mother, but a whole human being rather than just being defined by one relationship. I'm confident that I'm going to figure it out. And so I am prioritizing that space, giving myself time to just think and to be and to relax and to meditate and to draw, and not saying yes to every service opportunity that comes my way, letting other people step in and fill my children's needs. I don't have to fill all their needs. Letting other people feel their feelings when they fail to follow through on something, rather than sacrifice a piece of myself so that they are saved from the consequences of their actions. All those things allow me to be the type of person that I want my daughters to be. And it's really beautiful for me, and it's really motivating. For other women who are where I'm at or where I was a couple years ago, I say, don't hold back on your dreams. Let yourself have the big, crazy, audacious dreams and figure it out after you've written it down on the paper and you've owned whatever those dreams are. There's another piece of general advice that I really love from Harry Potter, which, if you know me, I love Harry Potter. It's to Harry when he's going into the first task in book 4, and it's from the Incognito Death Eater. And the piece of advice is, quote, get what you need. Very basic piece of advice. If you have a goal, get what you need to fulfill that goal. That probably sounds like no duh to most people. But this is really important to me because I will go around, a really small example. I have really high arches. I get plantar fasciitis. And I go through waves of needing inserts in my shoes and waves of thinking I don't need them and taking out, and then having a lot of foot pain, having lost the insoles, needing to buy new ones and just not. And so it is painful for me to walk around my own house. And I will hobble around, and I will avoid housework, and I will avoid getting up. And the fix is super easy. It's like a $10 insole from the grocery store. And it will take me like a month before I'll actually go and get these things and put them in my shoes. And then I can wear my shoes around, and it's like having a superpower. I can walk around without pain. And I didn't realize how much that pain was holding me back. Simply getting what I needed, the insoles, helped me fulfill my goal of making dinner or of playing soccer with my kids outside or whatever it is. Get what you need to fulfill your dreams. If that is a babysitter, if that is an online course, if that is a simple pair of Apple headphones so that you can record a podcast, get what you need to make your dreams happen. Next is ask for help and expect support. You are a whole entire person as a woman. I don't care what other relationships you have or what other roles you have in your life, but you are worthy of help and support from your close people in your life. And if the close people in your life cannot support you and aren't willing to help you, you need to get different people in your life. Let go of the people who will not be there for you. Invest in people who will. Go make relationships with people who will. Go join a women's group. Go join an online Facebook group. Listen to podcasts like this and find people who are like-minded who can give you the support that you need. And my last one is just start. Whatever you're interested in doing, even if you're not 100% sure, just begin. If you're wondering if you want to go back to school, maybe start with a local community college course, or start with an online masterclass, or read a book, or listen to a podcast. Just begin the process. If you're interested in being an entrepreneur, you're interested in doing music lessons, just start. You don't have to have a full book of clients, but try one or two. Try something consistent. See what you think, what you like. And as you go into that space of action, you will learn and you'll adjust. And maybe it's not the right thing for you, but if you are willing to fail fast, you will be able to pivot faster and get to your desired location quicker. And you cannot fail fast unless you take a risk and take action. I hope all of that has been helpful to someone out there. These are all topics that I'm super passionate about and are really important to me. And I am so excited to continue discovering them further as our podcast continues in season 2. I have some really amazing people lined up. If you or someone you know wants to be interviewed, or you think they would be great and you want to nominate them, you can shoot me a message at Women of Ambition Podcast. If you are interested in learning about homeschooling or the big RV trip we took, I share all about that at Big Round Schoolhouse on Instagram. If you're interested in homeschool consulting, I have www.bigroundschoolhouse.com where you can go for a consult. I really do love just connecting with people, helping people, serving people, and I get so much out of those interactions for my own growth that I really do. I'm really sincere when I say reach out and chat with me, message me. I just would love to get to know anybody who is willing to sit in this space with me, because it is so important. I think as we lift up ourselves or other women, we are all lifted up as a group, and it just creates more space for other people to live into their true selves. And I'm just really grateful for everyone who has been with me on this journey this last season. It's been a really great learning opportunity and a stretch. I just want to say thank you so much, and I really look forward to enjoying season 2 with you in the fall.